destroyed, and plans are in the making to relocate 300 students for classes next week. The cause of the fire is under investigation. The school had just had its roof repaired and the third story remodeled. Murder charges...
Town in west central Minnesota, losing the school means scrambling now to find new classroom space.
Firefighters say the top floor of the old high school portion of the school was already burning when they were called in. The fire started in a library and moved quickly through a maze of remodeled classrooms. Firefighters say this building gave them the same problem many older buildings do. False walls and false ceilings made fighting this fire very difficult.
The problem we had was that we've got about a 4-foot crawl space up above, typical on an old building, and the fire was already involved up in the entire structure above that ceiling, so we had no chance of containing it to one room. We knew at that point we had the whole entire upper floor involved.
Calls went out to 10 other area fire departments for help, but even with 150 firefighters, it took 5 hours to bring the fire under control. All that time, students could only watch as a big part of their lives went up in smoke.
Being a senior, it's even worse because, I mean, this year, you know, but it's nothing you can do about it, I guess. It's over. It's sad.
I tried to remember everything that was up there. I mean, there's a couple guys in my class that have been working on a physics project for 2 months, and just the other day they moved it up into the physics room and now it's gone. So they have two months worth of work on.
Parts of the building are still usable. The elementary wing was undamaged, along with the gym and auditorium. Now, the question is, where will the high school students finish their school year? District administrators say they have a plan. This vacant Catholic grade school will be reopened. Along with that space and some creative use of the existing building, it looks like all the students in Madison will be able to keep going to school in their hometown. Catherine Smith, Channel 5 Eyewitness News, Madison, Minnesota.
Will not be able to restore that.
Back in our studios with that and other stories. Paul?
Thank you both. Early this morning in Madison, Minnesota, more than 150 firefighters were called out. The local high school there was on fire. News 11's Bernie Grace has the story.
Flames shot into the night sky. They could be seen 10 miles away in Dawson. A patrolman for the Madison Police Department was first to spot the fire. When Madison firefighters arrived, they quickly saw help would be needed. Nearly a dozen other area fire departments joined the battle.
When we pulled up, the entire library room was totally engulfed, and it was already up into the false ceilings, and that made it almost impossible to try to contain it other than what we did.
The fire was confined to a 3-story structure built in 1908. It housed high school students. A new $200,000 roof had just been put on the building. Nearly 200 students will be displaced by the fire. For now, there's no word when school will reopen. Students were saddened by the blaze.
And my mom's a teacher, and she was screaming because she saw it burning, and we all ran into her bedroom and looked out the window and saw it burning.
There's all the memories and everything, a lot of stuff that went up in there in that section, so I guess it's kind of bad.
Fire officials say damage will run into the millions of dollars. But school officials say, had the fire not been confined to this old section of the school, the losses would have been much greater. In Madison, Minnesota, Bernie Grace, News 11.
So far, the cause of the fire has not been determined. Clayton Lowe.
When the firefighters arrived about 3:30 a.m., fire was already in the crawl space beneath the roof.
So we had absolutely, well, practically no chance whatsoever of containing it to one room. We knew we had the entire upstairs involved, and that's eventually what happened, was that it had to burn that roof off before we could contain it.
It took firemen from 11 different departments about 4 hours to bring the fire under control. As they continue to search for hot spots this morning, many of the school's students, their classes canceled until further notice, looked on.
I'm pretty sad. I mean, it's a lot of memories burned down.
Well, I'm kind of wondering where we're going to go to school right now, and I don't know what's going to happen now.
Those questions were addressed during a special school board meeting this afternoon. The superintendent told teachers and other district employees the board hopes to get students back to school as quickly as possible. He said while the old part of the building can't be used, once heat and power are restored, the newer parts can be. Church officials have offered the use of the vacant St. Michael's Catholic School nearby for classes.
I really can't tell you when or where you're going to be or anything like that until we always pass some time over the weekend to sit down with pencil and paper and try and figure some of those things out.
While school district officials work on getting students and teachers back to school, the state fire marshal's office and the Madison Police and Fire Departments will continue to investigate the cause of the fire. The fire marshal says arson has not been ruled out.
We're not able to determine that at this point. Have not really had a chance to do any digging into the structure to find a cause.
Peterson says it may be several days before the exact cause of the fire is known. In Madison, Don Savageau, 712 News.
The names of 2 people killed
could have been ended. There's so much history in this building that just really gave you a sick feeling to see that going up in smoke.
Fire officials continue to work through the rubble of the 79-year-old structure, searching for some clue as to what might have ignited the flames. Millions of dollars in damage is all that remains of the library and a number of classrooms on the top floor. Though heavily damaged by smoke and water, there is hope of salvaging the 2 floors below.
The building is insured, so I'm sure that the school is going to be back in Madison someday. It's just a matter of time.
We hope to have the students back in class as early as possible. We are not prepared to make any kind of a decision or statement at this time because we have not even had an opportunity or been given permission to walk into our building.
Despite today's loss, residents here say they will rebuild their school, rebuild the memories. A sign on another wing of the school left untouched by the flames leaves little doubt they will do just that. Jane Andrews, Kettleland News, Madison, Minnesota.
And there were no injuries in that blaze in Madison, Minnesota. A nearby church has already offered the school district the use of its vacant building.
And are looking for ways to replace their historic school. An early morning fire heavily damaged the western Minnesota town's junior and senior high school. A Madison photographer caught these pictures of the blaze. 150 firefighters from surrounding communities battled that fire for more than 6 hours. Authorities say they're not sure what caused it. It came as students were celebrating School Spirit Week. Terry Sater reports.
The school, built in 1908, was a birthplace for dreams in Madison. This morning, it went up in flames. Some of the school's 300 students watched in disbelief the tragic end to their School Spirit Week.
All of us have a lot of feelings in the school. I mean, it's too bad that it had to go. I mean, a lot of kids have graduated from here.
A dozen fire departments battled the schoolhouse blaze, which ignited on the 3rd floor shortly before 3 o'clock. It was more than a school for some of these firefighters. It was the place they first imagined riding their red trucks.
At the time of the fire, you don't think about it too much, but when you walk through all the rubble, it does bring back a lot of memories.
Firemen tried desperately to hose down the fire, and thousands of gallons of water flooded the entire building. Newer sections of the school were spared from the flames, but are heavily damaged from water and smoke. The 3rd-story library is in ashes. It's a painful sight for the teachers like Sherry Howe, who lives a block away, and whose husband graduated from the school.
We heard popping, and he went to the window and said, "My God, the school is burning." And we looked out, and it was the top floor had orange flames shooting out, and it was just really a sad thing.
The school's roof and upper story bricks were just remodeled. Most school records were saved, but science and computer labs are destroyed. The people in Madison say it will be tough to rebuild nearly 80 years of history, but school officials say it's time to look to the future, and the town's first goal is to get students back in classrooms as soon as possible. With Dick Nordling, Terry Sater, WCCO Television News, Madison.
Joe reports from Madison.
No dollar estimate of the damages available, but the fire destroyed the library, 9 classrooms, and office space in the 79-year-old building. The fire itself was contained mainly to the upper floor and roof area, but the rest of the building suffered heavy smoke and water damage. The fire apparently started in the school library on the 3rd floor and spread upwards into the false ceiling. When firefighters arrived about 3:30 a.m., fire was already in the crawl space beneath the roof.
So we had absolutely, practically no chance whatsoever of containing it to one room. We knew we had the entire upstairs involved, and that's eventually what happened, was that it had to burn that roof off before we could contain it.
It took firemen from 11 different departments about 4 hours to bring the fire under control. As they continued to search for hot spots this morning, many of the school's students, their classes canceled until further notice, looked on.
Well, I'm pretty sad. I mean, it's a lot of memories burnt down.
Well, I'm kind of wondering where we're going to go to school right now, and I don't know what's going to happen now.
Those questions were addressed during a special school board meeting this afternoon. The superintendent told teachers and other district employees the board hopes to get students back to school as quickly as possible. He said while the old part of the building can't be used, once heat and power are restored, the newer parts can be. Church officials have offered the use of the vacant St. Michael's Catholic School nearby for classes.
I really can't tell you when or where you're going to be or anything like that until we always pass some time over the weekend to sit down with pencil and paper and try to figure some of those things out.
While school district officials work on getting students and teachers back to school, the state fire marshal's office and the Madison Police and Fire Departments will continue to investigate the cause of the fire. The fire marshal says arson has not been ruled out.
We're not able to determine that at this point. Have not really had a chance to do any digging into the structure to find a cause.
Peterson says it may be several days before the exact cause of the fire is known. In Madison, Don Savageau, 712.
We're called to Madison, Minnesota, where they battled the blaze for hours. News 11's Bernie Grace reports.
Flames could be seen for miles around Madison, Minnesota. A patrolman spotted the fire about 3 this morning. When firefighters from Madison arrived, they knew they needed help. So nearly a dozen area fire departments joined the battle.
When we pulled up, the entire library room was totally engulfed, and it was already up into the false ceilings, and that made it almost impossible to try to contain it other than what we did.
Several hours after the fire broke out, smoke was still billowing from the rubble. Destroyed was a new $200,000 roof just recently put on the old section of the school, and the top floor of the 1908 building was gutted. A library, science lab, computer room, offices, and classrooms are now piles of debris. Students and alumni couldn't believe it.
And my mom's a teacher, and she was screaming because she saw it burning, and we all ran into her bedroom and looked at the window and saw it burning.
It's real tragic. When I heard about it this morning, I just could have cried. It just seems like a death in the community, a major death.
The state fire marshal's office is investigating the cause of the blaze. A decision will be made over the weekend when school will reopen. Fire officials say damage will run into the millions of dollars. But school officials say, had the fire not been confined to this old section of the school, the losses would have been much greater. In Madison, Minnesota, Bernie Grace, News 11.
Fire that destroyed part of their school. Arson is the suspected cause of the fire that spread through the town's only school. Firefighters needed 5 hours to bring that blaze under control, and officials say the fire was confined to the 3rd floor of that 79-year-old structure. There was extensive smoke and water damage, though, throughout the rest of the building. And school board officials say they plan to use the old St. Michael's parochial school building in Madison, and they also plan to hold classes in the newer section of the school, the part that was not destroyed by the fire.
An explosion. Offer from St. Michael's Catholic Church to use their education center, which is just across the street from the damaged high school. Additional classes will also be set up in areas of the high school which were not touched by that fire.
Those W4 new tax, or why didn't you get it?
School will be back in session on Monday, with some classes being held in an old parochial school. A 17-year-old youth...
Arson. 1 adult, 2 juveniles have been arrested in the case. They'll be charged with first-degree arson on Monday. The adult's name won't be released until formal charges are filed. The on-site investigation was scheduled to wrap up this afternoon. Damage to the building was confined to an older section, but the rest of the school sustained heavy smoke and water damage. Fire destroyed...
I can take it. Damage to the 78-year-old junior and senior high. Some of the town's 1,200 students will attend classes in a local church while school officials explore other options. No one was injured in the blaze, and no damage estimates have been released. Mike?
Neighborhood lead. This week, 18-year-old Keith Blessey was today charged with burglary and arson. 2 other juveniles are also charged in the case. The Madison High School was heavily damaged in an early morning fire on Friday. Some classes at the school have been canceled because of the fire.
Now, in their investigation of that fire last week.
1 adult and 2 juveniles are charged with arson and burglary in connection with that school fire in Madison, Minnesota. That story leads our look around the region this Monday. Fire investigators say 2 fires were set at the Madison Public School, one in the basement, the other on the 3rd floor. School officials say the heaviest damage was to the library, where thousands of books went up in flames. Classrooms on lower floors sustained heavy smoke and water damage, and for now, officials are moving desks and other equipment for high school students into a nearby vacant Catholic school. Classes are set to resume.
2 devastating fires late last week in Norwood, Minnesota High School. Madison authorities filed arson charges today against one 18-year-old Keith Bleethy, a student at the school, and 2 juveniles. Officials would not specify a motive, but called the fire, quote, a vindictive act. The fire at the Llano Equipment Company in Norwood may have caused
High School. Keith Andrew Blessy and 2 juveniles were charged with second-degree arson and first-degree burglary in Lacaparo County Court today. Authorities say the fire was intentionally set in a basement boiler room and a third-floor library. Classes for 600 elementary and high school students were canceled after the early morning fire Friday. School officials say classes will resume Wednesday. It's been almost 7 months.
Severely damaged the high school in Madison, Minnesota. At last report, the 3 had not yet been actually arrested. Meantime, the 600 students at Madison will return to school Wednesday morning in temporary classrooms.
2 men accused in North Rapids City
Public School, which is the only high school in the city. Authorities found a Molotov cocktail in the basement and a can of flammable liquid on the 3rd floor. School officials say the library was destroyed and classrooms below had heavy smoke and water damage. The plan now is to move the high school students to a nearby Catholic school building to use temporarily.
We have to physically move desks and teacher desks, student desks out